Okay, so when we are subtracting polynomials, we got to think about change, change, change. You change your sign to addition if there's a subtraction sign, and then you have to change the sign of your second parentheses only. So if you guys look at your first problem here, that minus in there really says that there's a -1 right there, and we're just distributing that -1 to both of those. So if you did -1 times 2, you would get a -2. If you did -1 times -5, you would get a +5. So if we go ahead and switch these signs, we know that we just distributed by a 1. That's all that means. Okay? So when we're saying we're changing the signs, that's why we're changing them, because we're distributing by a 1. And in this case, it's going to be a -1. Okay? And we'll get better at this once we go along and we do some of these together. So that first problem, I'm just going to rewrite the first part of it because I don't have to change anything to my first part. Now this is where I do my changing. If I'm really distributing by 1, I'm going through all of these. So if this is a +2, it's going to become a -2. If this is a -5, it's going to become a +5. And if this is a -3, it becomes a +3. And that's because we distributed by a -1. So our signs change for all of those. Okay? Now we can go through and combine like terms. So I've got a 4x squared and a 2x squared, but I always take the sign in front because that's what goes with my number. Then I'm going to use a box for my next one so I can see the differences. So I've got a box for my 2x and a box for my 5x. Okay? And the number that's by itself, I'm going to put a cloud around it just so I can see the differences and see what I can put together at the end. Now I can combine like terms. So let's look at my circles first. It says 4 minus 2. If I do 4 minus 2, I get 2x squared. So you always write your variable and your exponent. So now these are done. I already took care of them. You can cross them out. Then go to your box. You got 2 plus 5, which gives me 7, and then write down your variable. There's no exponent. Actually, there's an exponent of 1, but we don't need to write that. And then we've got -3 plus 3. Well, -3 plus 3 cancels each other out, so we don't even need to write anything because that would be 0, and we don't need to write down 0. So we're done. There's our answer. Not so bad. Let's try another one. Number 8 says it's decreased by. We know decrease by means to subtract. We know when we're subtracting polynomials, we have to change signs of the second one. So let's go ahead and write down the first one. 2a squared minus 8a plus 9. And all I did was write that down because we never touched the first one. It's always the second one that we have to change. So if I'm multiplying the second one by a -1, that -5 becomes a +5. That +6 becomes a -6. And that -4 becomes a +4. All we did was change our signs because we were distributing by a 1, a -1. Can we combine like terms? Of course. Let's see what goes with what. So I've got a squared here. Where else do I have an a squared? My 5 right here. Now let's box the next set that's the same. I've got an 8a and a 6a. And then I'm going to put a cloud around my last ones. So let's look at my circles. 2 plus 5 gives me 7, my variable, my exponent. Cross them out because we just took care of it. Then look at the box. I've got a -8 and a -6. So when you put that in your calculator, you should put in your calculator -8 plus -6, and you would get -14. A lot of you make mistakes when it comes to two negatives, so be careful. Then cross them out. What's left? 9 plus 4, which gives me a 13. And that's my answer. Okay, there was a little pause there because Justice just came in to pick up his quiz that he owed. He's on top of his game trying to finish up before Thanksgiving break. Nice job. Okay, so number 9 is a difficult one. There's a little star next to example 9 because we have a special word in example 9. If anybody can pick out what that special word is, if you remember it from our translating unit, subtracted from. Remember, subtracted from means we switch order and we subtract. So if we're switching order, all that means is that second part of that problem is going to come first. So this is coming first. We're going to write that first. If it's coming first, we don't have to change anything because remember, it's always the second part of your problem that you change. So all we have to do is just copy this down. Now it's the other part of the problem that we're going to have to change. This right here, we're going to have to change signs from. So if I have a +7 here, what do you guys think I'm going to have down here? A -7 and 3. If I have a +3 up here, I'm going to have a negative down here because remember we're distributing by a 1. So all we're doing is changing the signs. And our +2 would give us a -2 and 4. Now we can combine like terms. So my n squared, where else do I see an n squared? Right here. Now I have an n cubed. N cubed, I'm in a box. And I have an n cubed here. And then I'll leave those ones, or you could put a little cloud around them to know that those pair up. Now let's combine like terms. So I have n cubed. So it's really, there's a 1 in front of this n. 1 minus 3 gives me a -2n cubed. So cross those out. We just took care of it. Then go to your boxes. We've got +4 -7. So a 4 minus 7 will give you a -3n cubed. Cross it out. We took care of it. Then what's left? We've got 5 minus 2 gives us a +3n4. Always write down your variables with your exponents. And we are done. That is our final answer. Not so bad. If you take it one step at a time, we'll be fine doing this. Once again, I see that special word, subtracted from, which means to switch order. So this whole thing comes first. So go ahead and copy that down. X 4 plus 4x squared y minus 2x to the third y to the third. Now this is the tricky part. Remember, we don't do anything to our first part of the problem. We do change our second part. So if this is a -5, it's going to become a +5x to y. If that's a +6, it becomes a -6 x to the fourth. Okay, now we can combine like terms. So I've got an x to the fourth right here. Where else do I see an x to the fourth? At the back here, and I take the sign that's in front of it. Okay, what else can I pair up together? My 4x squared y, I could put a box around this. That goes with this right here. And that's it. So my x4, which really there's a 1 in front of here. So it's really 1 minus 6 gives me a negative 5x to the 4th. Then I can cross those out. Then I have a 4 plus 5, which gives me 9x squared y. Remember, write your variables and your exponents. Can cross that out. And then what's left over? Negative 2x3 y to the 3rd. That's my final answer. So remember, you need to make sure that when you see that word subtracted from, you switch the order. Remember your second part of your parenthesis, you got to change your signs because you're really distributing by a -1. Okay, so your signs need to change. So go ahead, grab your classwork from up front and try these on your own. If you have any questions, you can call me or Miss Howe over.